So if you've managed to get to this stage, really well done. This is now coming into what is really quite high level CAD, and to be able to create this number of parts using the skills that we've gone through so far and create an exploded diagram is really quite an achievement. We're going to look at two things now. We're going to look at something called a bill of materials, and then we're going to create a technical drawing of our exploded diagram here. So the bill of materials is this symbol over here. So if we click this, it will automatically bring in the item numbers, the quantity of them, a part number and a description. Now we don't need the part number, so we can remove that column. We don't need the description, so we can remove that column. And if we use the add column, what we can do is we can add name, and we can also add material. You'll notice that everything is called part 1 apart from my main body, and everything has no material assigned apart from part 9. Now we just have to do a little bit of admin to be able to populate this correctly, which is exactly what I've done on the main body as an example, and on part 9. You can see it highlights the part as you go through, and it's automatically assigned a number. So if I go into our parts and I go onto the reflector, you'll see here it automatically calls it part 1. So if I right click that, rename that reflector, and then go back into my complete assembly, you'll see it's now renamed that the reflector. So I can go through, and I'm not going to do all of them on this video, but I can rename each part. I'll pause there, rename them all, and then we'll start again. So you can now see I've gone through and I've renamed each part, and we can now look at the material. So if I go into my parts and we take the main body, for example, if I go in here, I can go assign material. I can then select or search for aluminium, and that will bring together the density, which we could use to do some calculations, some engineering calculations if we wanted to, but for the purpose of this, that will then assign that material into our bill of materials. So we can see we've got 2 with aluminium in there. Now sometimes, because this is a relatively complex part, it is hard to find the correct material, so you have to do some assumptions. And we can assign that as silicon rubber. And so on. So you can make an assumption about each part, and that will then fill in your bill of materials. These are likely to be an ABS plastic, a sprung steel or some form of steel, and the lens is likely to be glass. So if you want to, you can then go through and assign all the materials. We've got all the part names. Now what we're going to do with this is we're going to create a new drawing. We're going to add no views into that drawing. And from here, once we've opened this, we're going to select our exploded drawing here, and the view / orientation we're going to select as isometric. Now you can see we'll add this in, but this isn't the best view we could get of this. So if I double click, we can then change the angle until we get a better view. So that to me looks like a better view. We can add and make it a larger part, as we know how to do in terms of the scale. And that's now a really good view of our exploded diagram. From here, what we're going to do is insert our bill of materials. So the bill of materials is just up here. So we click, hover over, and you can pretty much put this anywhere you want on the page. Click that and it will automatically populate it for you. Now the clever bit we can do from here is we can now add what they call callouts. Now the program will automatically know which part we're looking at. So for example, that's part 1, and if we look at our table, number 1 is the lens cap, and if we'd signed a material, we would have the material on there. So then what we can do is we can go along and assign. Now you see how this one's still in red. That's because I hadn't located myself well enough, and it's actually a little bit tricky, so it's worth spending some time just zooming in. If I then escape, click on this one and delete it, I can then go through and assign a call out, and you can see I'm trying to do this slightly quickly. There we go, got it that time. Or maybe I didn't. Yeah, I have to look at why that one's not. I'm sure you'll be able to work it out. And this will give you a really good view of an entire product, the details of that product, the names, and you can imagine if you wanted to explain a product to somebody else and really make the most of the CAD drawings that you've created, this is a hugely beneficial way of doing that. So you can now see I've added all of the parts in. Now you may be having the same problem I was having, which is it won't locate very well onto the rubber seal. So to help you with this and give you a solution, what you can do, if we take this rubber seal for example, we select that rubber seal, we look on our diagram, we know that's number 10, so in this box up here, before we click down, we can write the number 10 and then click that in. We can do exactly the same for the other ones. So for example, this one is number 5. We can click off, up, set it as number 5, and then that will give us an easier way to locate. I'm not quite sure why it's being difficult to locate the rubber seals, because everything else seemed fine, but that is how to create a diagram of your exploded a drawing of your exploded diagram with the call outs and the bill of materials.